Welcome to our review for the English 3 Quarter 1 assessment. In this lesson, we'll be focusing on grammar and conventions, specifically on boundaries questions. These are a key part of the SAT and our district test, so it's important to know exactly how to approach them. Boundaries questions focus on how clauses, both independent and dependent, as well as phrases, are linked together in written English. Boundaries questions often show you a passage with a blank, and your job is to choose the option that makes the sentence follow standard English grammar rules. The question will ask which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English. Did you know the best strategy for grammar and conventions questions is to pay close attention to the answer choices? The choices themselves are clues. They tell you what to focus on when solving the problem. First, we are going to focus on independent clauses. An independent clause is a group of words with a subject, who or what, and a verb, what they do, that can stand on its own independently as a complete sentence. Here are some examples of independent clauses. The students study grammar. The verb is the action of the sentence. Here it is study. If you ask who or what is studying, you will get your subject, students. The teacher explains concepts. The verb here is explains. Who or what is explaining? The teacher. Teacher is the subject. And finally, the athletes compete daily. Compete is the verb. Athletes is your subject. An independent clause is independent because it can stand on its own and it doesn't need anything else. They always have a subject, a verb, and communicate a complete idea. Independent clauses are sentences. There are three main ways to correctly link independent clauses. First, use a comma plus a fanboys word, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. Second, use a semicolon just by itself. And third, use a semicolon followed by a transition word and then a comma. The only two on the Q1 assessment are comma fanboys and semicolon transition comma. One way to do this is by using a comma fanboys construction. Here's the rule. A comma must come before a fanboys when linking two independent clauses together. Look at the example. Freshly baked bread may lose some of its flavor, but when stored for several days, such bread, though slightly stale, can still be delicious when toasted. We can see there are two independent clauses because there are two subjects and two verbs. Here's what the question might look like. Notice how the two halves are complete sentences. That means we need a construction that correctly links them. The first step is to look at the blank and determine if there is an independent clause, a subject and a verb, and a complete idea on both sides of the blank. If so, you know you need a construction that will correctly link the two sentences together. If both sides are independent clauses and fanboys' words are present in the answer choices, then you know you'll need a comma fanboys. Step 2, check those answer choices. If there are fanboys options, rule out anything that doesn't use a fanboys construction. We've eliminated B and C because neither of them include fanboys. Finally, choose the fanboys option that places the comma before the fanboys. Here's the easiest and quickest way to find the correct answer on the assessment. If fanboys appears in the answer choices, if you see any fanboys answers, choose the one with the comma before it. That's going to be the right answer. But if you're not entirely confident or you don't completely understand, you need to go ahead and move through those steps of elimination. See if you can use this quick strategy on your own. Your teacher may want to pause to give you guys a couple of minutes. Answer C is the correct answer because it effectively links the independent clauses and it's punctuated correctly with the comma before the fanboy. But what if there are two independent clauses and no fanboys in the answer choices? That's when transition words come in. Fanboys are not the only way to link two independent clauses. Sometimes a transition word is the perfect choice. Here's the rule. When linking two independent clauses with a transition word, use a semicolon before the transition and a comma after it. Check out this example. The play was not a comedy. However, it was a serious reflection on human nature. Take a second to look at this question type. First, look at the blank and determine if there is an independent clause. Remember, that's a subject and a verb and a complete idea on both sides of the blank. If so, you know you need a construction that will correctly link the two sentences together. Next, look to see if there are any fanboys in the answer choices. If not, check for any transition words. If you see a transition word, you need to rule out any choices that do not have a semicolon. Looking at these answer choices here, we can eliminate A and B. Finally, eliminate any choices that do not have the semicolon coming before the transition word with a comma following. Eliminate C because this is not the correct semicolon transition comma construction. D is our answer because it links the two independent clauses and has the correct punctuation. Okay, here's the easy and quick option. For the Q1 assessment, look at the choices. If there are any semicolon answers, just choose the one with the semicolon, transition, comma, construction. You can always double check by completing the steps and eliminating. Now you should try. Again, your teacher will probably want to pause this video to give you a few moments. Answer B is the correct answer because it links the independent clauses and is punctuated correctly with the semicolon, transition, comma construction. But what if there are two independent clauses on both sides of the blank, but there are no fanboys or transition options in the answer choices? This is going to be our last one dealing with independent clauses, so guys, hang in there. Independent clauses cannot just simply run together. They must be either linked by punctuation or separated by punctuation. Here's the rule. When two independent clauses, or complete sentences, are run together incorrectly, you can fix the run-on by separating them into two complete sentences with a period. Look at this example. The new mobile app has been released. It allows users to download materials directly to their phones and tablets. Here's an important reminder. A comma cannot link two clauses or complete sentences together. Only a comma fanboys or a semicolon transition comma can do that. If these choices are not there, look for the period. We don't want any comma splices. Here is what the question will look like. Take a second to get a feel for it. Again, the first step is to look at the blank and determine if there is an independent clause on both sides of the blank. If so, you know you need a construction that will either correctly link the two sentences together or separate them. Second, once you know there are two independent clauses, check the answer choices for incorrect punctuation. Rule out any that aren't fanboys, or semicolon transition comma. We can eliminate B, C, and D. The only option left is to separate the clauses with a period. This effectively prevents a run-on. A is the correct answer because it effectively does this. You can quickly glance at the answer options and see if there are any period answers that correctly separate the sentences. This will get you to the correct answer. Remember, if you are unsure, you should go through the steps to eliminate choices. Okay, now it's your turn to try. Teachers, go ahead and pause it for a few moments so students can figure out the correct answer. B is the correct answer because it correctly separates the two independent clauses, avoiding a comma splice. Okay, guys, let's take a break for a little bit from the video so you can get a chance to test your skills. When we come back, we're going to look at dependent clauses. Welcome back. I hope you guys had some success practicing with the independent clause questions. Now let's get back to it, looking at dependent clauses. But what if you look at the blank and there is not an independent clause on both sides? What if one of them is a dependent clause? A dependent clause is a clause. It has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone because it starts with a word like although, because, when, or if that keeps it from communicating a complete idea. It's going to need an independent clause in order to make sense. Look at these examples. None of them can stand on their own, even though they have both a subject and a verb. This is because they have a word at the beginning that is subjugating it or making it dependent on an independent clause to complete it. Although it was raining heavily, because she studied all night, if I finish my work early, all of these leave us wanting more when they are not linked to an independent clause. They need to complete the idea. Let's take a look at the rule. If a dependent clause comes at the beginning of a sentence, it must be followed by a comma. Look at this example. When the clock struck midnight, comma, the crowd erupted in cheers. Take just a second to see what this type of question looks like. To figure this one out, you must first look at the blank and ask yourself if what comes before it is an independent clause or if the first word is preventing it from being a complete idea, a dependent clause. If it is a dependent clause, you will need to choose the correct punctuation. Next, if it is a dependent clause that cannot stand on its own, you can rule out any fanboy options. These are only for linking independent clauses. They will not be used with dependent clauses. Then you need to look for the correct punctuation. So here we can rule out A and D because they do contain fanboys. Since you must use a comma following a dependent clause that begins a sentence, choose the option with the comma. We can rule out B because it is missing the comma. So our answer is C. You know you're going to get the easy, quick version. So if you know there is a dependent clause at the beginning of a sentence, choose the answer that is the last word of the clause followed by a comma. All right, let's see what you can do. Teachers, pause the video for just a moment. Answer C is correct because it has a comma following the last word of the dependent clause. Okay, guys, I was going to do one more example, but we're going to save it for next time instead. I know this seems daunting. I know that it seems like a lot, but when you start working through the questions and you get a good look at them, you're going to see how easy it actually is if you follow the steps. You can also follow the easy, quick method if that works for you, if you don't need to eliminate choices. But the key is to practice. So good luck practicing until next class. Thanks. Bye bye.